All right, so we are joined from Jackson by Hinds County Chancery Court Judge Tametrice Hodges. We thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule for us today. This is our business law class here at Velma Jackson High School. I've got a room full here with me, and we're recording this for all of our students in Madison County schools, including your sorority sister, my friend April Majors, over at Ridgeland High School, Madison Central High School, Germantown High School, the Academic Options Center, and our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for taking some time for us today.
Hey, not a problem. Thank you for having me.
All right. So before we get into all it is you do as a judge, just take us a little bit about your background. You're from Jackson, went to the illustrious, famous Piney Wood School, and then went to college up in Ohio, and then came back to go to law school. So just take us through that process and how you got into the legal field.
All right, I'm Judge Tametrice Hodges, Lindsay. That Lindsay is now attached to my name now. I recently got married and we just had our first child, a baby girl, little
Awesome.
girl
Awesome.
Esme. So we're very happy about that.
Congratulations.
So I grew up here in Jackson. Thank you. I grew up in Jackson, product of Jackson Public Schools. Went to boarding school at the Piney Woods Country Life School. That's when it was Piney Woods Country Life School. Now it's just the Piney Woods School. And at that time, we had 7th through 12th grade at
Okay.
Piney Woods. And we had a very famous choir, the Cotton Blossom Singers, still famous, just they hadn't been out touring like they used to years ago when I was a student at Piney Woods and a few years afterwards. After Piney Woods, after graduating class valedictorian, went on to Denison University. That's 20 minutes from Columbus, where the Ohio State is located. And as you may know from last week, they are now the champs, the
They are.
football champions. So very happy about that. Stayed up late watching that. Tried my best not to scream and wake the baby up. So I enjoyed watching that game. Very good game against Notre Dame. And Denison University is a 4-year liberal arts school. And so after I finished there, returned home, attended Mississippi College School of Law, located in downtown Jackson. And after law school, I went to work for my first job, which was at Morgan and Morgan, which is a very good job I had fresh out of law school. Didn't know much, but I was able to learn because they threw me in a 12 feet pool, and I swam. Made a lot of money, and decided, hey, I want to go out on my own. And I opened up my own law practice, Hodges Children's Law, where I specialized in family law, and I did some workers' compensation. I also did criminal defense and anything else that came in the door because when you work for yourself, you need money. And so I took the money that came in. Af- After those years, I went to work as a prosecutor in Yazoo Holmes Humphreys, the 21st district. Worked there 6 months, and but then wanted to be back home in Hinds County, so I went to the 7th Judicial District and worked for Robert Schuler Smith on the tail end of his administration, and also Jody Owens during his administration. And during his administration, I ran for judge and won for Hinds County Chancery Court Judge, which was his aunt seat, Jody Owens' aunt seat, Judge Denise Owens, who was the first Black woman to be elected to serve in Sub District 3, and I am now the second, and so I'm happy to have that torch in my hand.
That's awesome. And then, and I know you're humble, but when you were elected, that was actually history because at that time, all the judges in Hinds County were female, and I know that I know
Yeah.
that made news, so that was a big deal as well. Now, and thank you for that. Thank you for that timeline. But I think and I know you said when you were an entrepreneur, you dealt with all types of law, but I know a passion of yours was always the family law and the unemployment. The workers' comp and things like that, which is what we talk about in this business law class and what we really try to hit on because look, we know all these kids aren't going to be legal professionals. But my big thing is kids need to know their rights as they become employees, if they ever become entrepreneurs, and they need to understand that dealing with a judge, dealing with an attorney shouldn't be something that's scary. Just because you go into a courtroom doesn't mean somebody's going to jail. Just because you deal with an attorney doesn't mean somebody's freedom is at stake. So just talk about some of the things you've dealt with when it comes to employee rights and workers' compensation and things like that, because that's something that kids need to know as they start to become working adults.
Now, I know it best from the workers' comp perspective. So when you work on a job, usually most jobs they have workers' compensation insurance. So when you work a job, as long as they have 5 or more employees, they qualify for workers' comp insurance. And so let's say you work at the school because y'all at the school. And so you work at the school, and so they say, "Hey, we're getting ready for back to school. Get your classroom together." You know, that's a common thing. Teachers arrive early to prepare their classrooms. Let's say Professor Greg here, he decides he wants to pull a desk because he's trying to get his room together. He wants to move one desk from one room to another. But in the process of doing so, he hurts his back. He says, I feel a pop in my back, and now my leg is burning, my back is hurting. And that means he's going to be able to go to the hospital. But usually the employer will say, well, okay, we'll go to the hospital, but come back to work. Well, then the problem may be more worse than he may have reported. And so that's when the big fight happens. Some employers are not gracious enough to say, well, hey, go back to the doctor, come back with a report, let us know. Because some doctors will take you off work if it's very serious, and some doctors, if it's not serious, they won't take you off work. And usually you have to be off work 5 days in order to be paid workers' comp payments, and usually that's only like a third of what you're getting paid anyway. So if you're getting paid $1, you're gonna be getting paid somewhere between like 25 cents or less, somewhere in there. I don't do math for a living, so but y'all got me. And so you'll get paid less than what you will earn on your job. You'll get this benefit weekly. And I have had the pleasure, not so great pleasure, representing a lot of injured workers in the past. I've had one case where the guy, he lost his hand at work and
Ooh,
his entire hand, and now has to have a hook. And we were able to get him 400,000 for his
wow.
injury. Um, yeah, and that was a very sad situation. Or one of my clients, they made a prosthetic hand for him to keep from paying him so much money. And then, of course, back injuries are very prevalent, but you got to watch for those back injuries because they can go either way. They can either be a big payout or a small payout. And one thing I always try to impress upon people, you don't want to come into money as an injured person. You know, I always say, let me just win the lottery, because at least if I win the lottery, I can manage the money. But the people who manage their money will never win the lottery. Ain't that something? I always be safe on the job. If I have to tell you anything about workers' comp, be safe on the job because um, the employers are always trying to have the upper hand, and they want to be like the insurance company, not pay. And so you
Yeah.
have to take them to court to make them pay. So.
Yeah, but I think it's important, even if you're a 16-year-old working at Kroger or you're working at McDonald's, if you're ever injured, even if it's small, always report that. Don't just say, oh, they're going to get mad at me and fire me because I'm hurt. They are legally obligated to make sure. I mean, like you said, sometimes they'll try to skirt around it, but if you have a paper trail saying, look, I reported it on this date, it is very tough to defend that when it comes to workers' compensation law.
Yeah, and the reports are very important because if you report it to your supervisor and they don't report it, it's always good for you to go to the doctor. And then you will report it then to the doctor. Let me get my charger. So once you report it to the doctor, then the doctor, you'll have your starting paper trail with the doctor. And so from there, you'll just keep going to the doctor and keep getting those paper trails. So no matter whether your boss took down the report or not, you still have your medical paper trail. And sometimes some people get the police involved with cases, but those are normally at the slip and falls. Like somebody goes to the grocery store and they're trying to get some produce and there's something wet there. They never saw it, no sign, they slip and fall. They can call the police and get a whole police report because, of course, in that instance, they don't want to pay.
Yeah, and another thing that we've talked about, especially with these young high school kids and going to be college kids working, is pay attention to your pay stub. You're entitled to overtime pay in a lot of cases for over 40 hours a week. So even in a lot of because I had a mistake on my paycheck once, and it wasn't intentional. But pay attention to things like that, and they fixed it with no problem. But oh, why is it important to pay attention to what you're being paid? Because I'm sure you've seen cases where employers were not paying people the correct rate.
I've never done those cases. That'll get off into the territory of employment law. And so
Okay.
I took the class in law school, but I didn't go into employment law. So I only know tidbits from a textbook perspective. See, I'm real good. That's another little tip I want to leave with you. If that's not your ministry, don't even try to delve into it. So I'm very upfront with people, let them know what's
Yeah.
my ministry and what's not. Like somebody asked me, tell me something about trust. I said, oh no, ma'am. I said, I read the law about trust as a judge, but as a lawyer, I never delved into
Yeah.
trust beyond very basic. This is the beneficiary, and this is the person who's going to preside over the monies. That's
Yeah.
it.
Now, and I know in Chancery Court, you also deal with a lot of family law. So, it
Yes.
can be something as bad as crazy as an ugly divorce, but it can be great things like adoptions. So, talk about what is handled in the Chancery Court when it comes to family law cases, because I've always thought that was crazy how it could be something intense like people separating, people trying to decide wills and testaments, but you also have the great celebratory moments where family gets to adopt a child. So just talk a little bit about what goes on in the Chancery Court,
Yes.
because like we said, just because you go in a courtroom, it's not like Law and Order like we see on TV. There's so much more that happens in a courtroom.
Yes, I love that show, Law and Order. I watch it now. When I first became an attorney, I didn't watch it much because people always came up to me and said, "Oh, your job easy," and I'm like, "Say what now? If it's so easy, I need some of my money back for dry cleaning because I'm sweating out my suits, standing in court arguing cases. Okay, apparently, it's not that easy. And if it was that easy, God would have never made lawyers or judges. You just make your own decisions, and apparently." You cannot. And so when you cannot agree with another person, like in the context of, so Kathy and John, I'm about to say Kathy and Jane, but we got that too now. So Kathy and Jane or Kathy and John, they have a child together. They go together. Like the song by Lil Red, about Sexy Red. We go together, we go together. But then all of a sudden they no longer go together. And so they breaking up. They were never married, they just go together. And so now they upset about who's going to have the child and when and where they can't agree. And so they have to come to court. And so my job as a judge is to determine who will have the custody of the child. You might hear people say, well, I got primary custody. That's not a thing. That's not a thing, but we just keep the language going because that's how people understand it. And so one person will get the physical custody because that's the real language. One person get the physical custody of the child, meaning the child will be with that person majority of the time, and the other parent will have the visitation of the child. So it'll be every weekend or every other weekend, and during the holidays, or in addition to as many more times as the two parties can agree. I also do divorces. Sometimes people get divorced without the other person on the other side because somebody said, we married. We're gonna go out to eat on Valentine's Day. We're gonna have a great time. On the February 15th, the person has left. And they hadn't heard from this person in about 15 years. And so they come to
Wow.
court and say, I now want my divorce. We can do that. We can
Wow.
divorce you. Also, something that is tricky in those instances, if you never made the effort to serve that person, after that 15 years that you waited, so that means 30 years later, I can overturn that divorce because you never served the person. I allowed a lady to her divorce to be overturned
Wow.
because the husband he never served her, and he knew where she was. He was actually living in the house with her. You know, the house he left, where he packed his clothes up from, that he now lives in with his current new wife. You know, those things happen in Chancery Court. So yeah, it's juicy over there. So if you ever want to come and spectate, feel free. I have court in the summertime. If you want to come, look me up, say, hey, I want to come over, I want to intern or extern, I can make it happen. Let you sit in on all this juicy stuff. We also have deal with wills and estates.
Yep.
So if grandma got a nice big house, she got a couple of diamond rings, a couple of china sets, and so she can create a will and leave all those things to whoever she wants. But guess what? She got three granddaughters, and one of the granddaughters said, I don't just want a diamond ring. I want all the china sets, and I also want the house and the other two diamond rings, not the one you gave me. Well, she can come in the court and contest contest the will or contest the bequest, the gifts of what grandma left behind. But some people are smart. They'll put in their will, if you try to contest, you get nothing. Remember that when you make your will in the future. If they try to contest, say you get nothing. Put that clause in there. But
Wow.
oftentimes people die without a will because they feel like they have nothing. They're like, well, I ain't got nothing. I just got this house and this Toyota Corolla. Well, guess what? Somebody still got to get it. And we still got to do something with it. You forgot about your state retirement. You got a job and you work with for the state. That's retirement money. Or you work somewhere else and you got retirement, or you got a 401k, or you got a Roth IRA. You got something. And so you want to make it easier for your beneficiaries because maybe you leave behind 3 to 5 kids. We don't know. We want to make it easier for them to have those things. Also in Chancery Court, we deal with state agency appeals, and this will get a little boring for you, not for me. So with state agency appeals, let's say you got a license. If you got a license of any kind that's in the state of Mississippi, I hear those cases when your license has been challenged. Let's say Mr. Greg gets in trouble and he has to go before the disciplinary board of the school district, and they say, "Well, we suspending you as a teacher, or we taking your license." Well, Mr. Greg can then follow the chain all the way up to Chancery Court to appeal to me. I'll be one of his first stops after he finishes following the disciplinary chain with the school. And so then I would hear the case anew to determine whether he should be able to keep his license or not. Even if you work at the nail shop and you got a license to do nails or to do hair, I hear those cases when a case has been brought against you to challenge your license. Of course, the school, well, the licensure board is going to hear it first. If you don't like what happened there, you can always come and appeal to the Chancery Court. That's what a lot of people don't know about. And then we got adoptions. Love those. But
Yeah.
before you can get to the happy part about adoption, it's a sad part that comes before. Some parent or two parents have lost their parental rights. That's how adoptions come about. So the real
Wow.
parents are no longer wanting to be the parent of this child, either voluntarily or because a court has found that they have neglected this child or abandoned this child for an extended period of time, or they have
Wow.
unfortunately abused this child. These things happen. That's the very sad part. I handle those types of cases too. We call them TPRs, termination of parental rights. So once we're done with that, the new parents come up and say, "We want to adopt this child." And that is like one of the best things going. I had a courtroom with like 32 family members waiting on me when I pulled up to court, and they were all so happy to adopt this little girl who was clearly, I could tell she runs the house. She's like a little tot, and she was almost running my courtroom because she was having such a good time running around, talking and playing with all the family members while I was listening to the questions and answers to get her adopted that day. So that's
That's awesome.
always a very good way to start court. And of course, we have a lot of other things out here in Chancery Court, like land. Y'all out in Madison County, y'all a little bit more spread out than we are in Jackson, because you got to go out to the outskirts of Jackson, go to the surrounding small towns that
Yeah.
surround Jackson to get some good land. And so we hear land issues. If you die, your land can pass automatically by statute. We just got to determine who your people are or determine the heirs.
Yeah.
Um, Also with land, you got to pay your taxes because if you don't pay the taxes on your land or on your property, then if you hadn't done that within 3 years, then it'll be up for grabs for somebody else. Somebody else can come in and start paying the taxes on your land or on your property, and then they have it for themselves. Because unless you redeem it, of course. If you don't redeem, well, they can go in and they can come in the Chancery Court and say, "Judge, I want you to confirm title on this property or on this land for me and quiet the title." And I will do that. Now, if it's people involved, I try to give the people more chances to come to get their property or their land because, maybe you forgot, maybe you got sick, maybe you worked out of town just a little too long. We don't know. But when there are businesses who are coming in trying to get it, and there are no people, like no everyday people involved, well, we go ahead and let them have it because then they're going to do with the property what they feel like they're going to do with the
Yeah.
property, which is probably get tenants, or they might use it as a tax write-off or whatever the case may be.
Awesome.
So a
Now,
lot happens in Chancery Court. It's like
uh,
it's Springer.
Yeah, I'm actually, I actually went to high school with Tiffany Grove, and actually said the exact same thing. She says sometimes I feel like I'm on the Jerry Springer show. But before I get to the students' questions, a couple of
Yes,
things I
and
did want
that's
to
how you
talk
can
about
tell
real
our
quick.
ages.
Yeah, yeah. But a couple of things I did want to
I
talk
said that's
about
how you
real
can tell
quick.
our age because we say Jerry Springer. We don't know what the show is now.
Oh, exactly. Um, but one thing, even though your position is an elected position, there are several careers at the courthouse that I think a lot of people don't know about that are not only necessary but are very good careers. So just talk about some people that work at the courthouse that make the courthouse move every day.
We need court reporters. I can't say it enough. You can come out of high school, go and get trained as a court reporter, probably go to school no more than 2 years, and you will be making big money as a court reporter. A court reporter is one of the most important persons in the courtroom besides the judge. The judge, the number one, and the court reporter is the number two. Sometimes I feel like my court reporter should be the number one and I'm the number two because guess what? After I've heard a case, she becomes super important because she has to transcribe the record if it is requested. And usually people request the record because they want to appeal the case or they just may want to have it for later to, do whatever they want to do with it. And so a court reporter, what she or he does is they sit there and they type each and every word that is spoken in the courtroom and then they transcribe it. When I say transcribe, meaning they create a whole transcript and then they get paid for transcribing that transcript. So guess what? You not only getting your salary as the court reporter for the courtroom, but if somebody asks you to transcribe a transcript, you get paid that money too. And let me tell
Yeah.
you how much a transcript costs, anywhere from 300 going all the way up. I think I had to pay 1,500 one time for a transcript. It got hefty. It got real hefty because it was a lot that happened on the record. So you can make real good money as a court reporter. Court administrators, they make good money. They are the gatekeepers for the judge. They sit and they listen, they take the calls of their attorneys who say, hey, I want to come in and get on the judge's docket to be seen and heard on this day. That's what a court administrator does all day long. And they go and get training as well. They are trained and they have a whole association. The court reporters have an association because those associations are protecting their jobs. So usually when someone becomes a court administrator for a judge, they stick around a very long time and they are with that judge a very long time. My court reporter was with Judge Denise Owens for an extended period of time, and now she's with me. So she's been in Hinds County Chancery Court for a very long time. So you can find
Wow.
a lot of court reporters like that. Or you can be a court reporter that works for him or herself, have your own company, and make even more money because you won't be stuck with the salary. The clerk's office, the clerks are very important. They take in all the complaints that you file and your money to file your complaints, and they file it, and they also are the gatekeepers of the wills, the land records. Those are good jobs over there. You want it. Trust me.
Yeah,
Because,
absolutely.
you can have it for a very long time.
Yeah, and like you said, those don't necessarily require a 4-year college degree. They have tech programs that you can do that in a year or a year and a half at these community colleges, and they will plug you in immediately because these positions are much needed in the legal system.
Yes. And we advertise for them often, especially court reporters right now. We have a court reporter shortage throughout the state. You can start as a court reporter at fresh out, and then when you decide you no longer want to do it, you can go and do something else. But I would, impress upon you, consider being a court reporter if you're interested. Because some people, I know an attorney now, she started as a court reporter, but now she's an attorney with her own law firm. She sat there and
Yeah.
typed and learned, went to law school,
Wow.
did well. Now she's an attorney.
That's awesome. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about before I get to their questions is like we mentioned, you have an elected position. So you will have to run for office again when your term ends. And one thing I've always said is, look, I, I'm not smart enough to give people advice on how to vote, and it's not my place as a teacher. But one thing I've always said is when elections come around, no matter what is being voted on, these kids need to have themselves in a voting booth voting for somebody. Learn who is in these local and state and county positions. Because look, we all know about the presidents, and we can argue about that all day long. But the people that are in these local seats and these county seats and these state seats, affect our everyday life so much. So why is it so important for these kids to know what these offices are and why they need to have a say in who fills them?
Because these positions, they affect your life. That's number one, it affects your life. Are you paying attention to what's happening with our new president? Well, not too new, he back. All of a sudden, all the illegal immigrants are being rounded up and removed. And so when you're not clear on the issues and the facts, then you yourself can become a victim to something like that. Or how a national group that protected the rights of workers, where the head of the board was recently terminated. So that's affecting workers being able to complain and file their grievances and have them heard and being protected on a job. So when we don't know who's running, when we don't know the facts, when we don't know how this could potentially affect us, then either we do not go out and vote, or we do vote, we make a choice, and then we eventually have to live with that choice. Mississippi is one of the states that has elections every year. So this year, right now we're having the mayoral races in all the different counties across the state. And so get to know who your mayor is. Y'all mayor out in Madison, well, she got a stronghold. I don't think she's leaving
Yeah,
anytime soon.
And Mayor
Um,
Gene McGee in Ridgeland as well. But at some point they're going to step aside. You need to know who these candidates are. I know Kenton
right.
is electing a new mayor as well as obviously the one in Jackson. So it's very important. Flora as well as having a mayoral race. So know who these candidates are and vote for somebody. I'm never going to tell anybody who to vote for, but people the voting rights of everyone
Yeah,
has never has
get informed.
vote for some.
Yeah, just get informed. Always, a lot of places not a lot of places, but some groups they hold forums so you can meet a lot of the candidates. And then you yourselves, you are sitting out there. Guess what? You're our next generation. You're our future. And so you all will be the next leaders. Like I said when I started outset, I'm glad to be holding this torch. I now have the torch. At some point, one of you will have the torch. And so you want to get all the information you can, because I know there may be a mayor or a constable or a city council person sitting in the classroom right now listening to me. And so we need you in the different cities, the municipalities, as we call them throughout the state, to help, make the municipalities stronger, make them better.
Awesome. Well, I do have some questions. I'll get to as many of these as I can. I like this first one. This was Edward Flowers. He's in 10th grade. He's one of our band members here. And he asked, how do you keep from trivial matters coming into your courtroom?
Well, it's hard because, like I said, the court administrator is the one who sets the cases. And so usually experienced court administrators, they will sometimes they'll go and they'll say, well, give me the case number. And then they'll go and review the petition. And if they think it's trivial, they'll come to their judge and say, Judge, this person is trying to get X, Y, and Z on the docket. How do you feel about that? Usually I try not to be too strong of a gatekeeper. I want people to be able to be heard. And so I do allow them to come into the courtroom. We'll get on the record, and then, I will dispose of the case in the manner it should be disposed of according to the law. So, like I had one time a lady wanted to come in. She wanted to change her name from, we'll just say Stacey Adams. She wants to change her name from Stacey Adams to uh, Bookity Bookity. I'm not going to tell you the real name she wanted to change it to, but she wanted to change her name to Bookity Bookity. It was something very similar to that. Well, I can't change your name to Bookity Bookity. Because under our statutes in Mississippi, to have your name changed, there are certain requirements that have to be met, meaning there was an error committed on your birth certificate, or some or another matter that happened, but she did not meet it. So I let her come, but I just made sure I followed the law. So, and then you have some people who constantly filing things, file all sorts of trivial petitions, and I just, I have to hear it, but I have to wisely dispose of it according to the law.
Yeah, I got time for one more. This is Zayden Reed. She's in 9th grade. And she asked, what about your job as a judge have you found most interesting?
Let's see. the stories of the people. That's what's most interesting. What I find most interesting is that in May, I have the same case every week, just different people. They all coming in fussing and fighting about summer visitation. And so I have that every week in May, the same case, meaning the same
Wow.
issue, just different people. So I find that very interesting how the timeline or the timing of the cases fall when it's time for summer. I get a lot of fighting around May, and then I get some more fighting in July because school is about to be back in, and so guardianship is now the issue. And so again, same case each week, different people.
Absolutely. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us out of your schedule. But a couple things before we go. First of all, the Hinds County Chancery Court, if anybody ever wants to come by, one thing I learned from the great Justice Jim Kitchens, who just got out of the Supreme Court, he said, look, court is the most public forum in America. You can learn a lot by just going and sitting and listening.
Yes, and the courthouses, they are open to the public. The only time Chancery Court will not be open to the public or Circuit Court is when we're dealing with a very serious issue concerning a child. So
Yeah.
for Circuit Court, there will be sex cases. Those are closed to the public. As a prosecutor, I took a lot of those to trial, and those cases were always closed to the public. No media, nothing. And then in Chancery Court, if I have a very serious issue regarding children, I will close and shut down my courtroom to the public. I will actually have the door locked so no one can get in while we're having court.
Yeah.
But otherwise, come on in.
Yeah, and like you said, it's amazing what you can learn just by seeing this how the system works. And I think, that's what I wanted to close with is that it's just so important for our young people to understand how it works. They don't need to be scared of the legal system because there's great people like yourself. And it's important to understand it because when you don't understand it, that's when you can find yourself falling victim to things. So why is it so important? Because obviously everybody's not going to be in the legal field, but why is it so important for our kids to understand how the system works?
Because you want to be as productive as an adult as possible, or even now as a teenager, you want to be very productive. You want to be able to stand 10 toes down on decisions that you make, or when you feel like somebody is running afoul of you, then you won't be scrambling or feeling like you have no voice. You'll be able to stand up straight and say, no, you can't do that to me because the law says this. And then if they buckle back, because we all nuck if you buck generation, we out here still. That's my generation, the nuck if you buck. So they gonna buck back. But you'll be able to say, let me go get my mama, who gonna give me a lawyer, and then that'll make them stand down. So you want to know your rights and you want to know how to move about as an adult moving forward.
Absolutely. Well, again, we thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you got to get back to court. So we thank you, as always, for taking some time for us. Hinds County Chancery Court Judge Tametrice Hodges, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank y'all.
All right, talk to you soon, buddy.